Welcome to Boston Jewish Now, a podcast from JCRC of Greater Boston. I'm Jeremy Burton, CEO of the JCRC, and I'm joined today by Melissa Garlick, Associate Vice President of CJP, running the Center for Combating Antisemitism. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
On this podcast, our aim is to help Greater Boston's Jewish community make sense of the world around us, what is happening locally, nationally, and globally, and why it matters to us here in Massachusetts, and also to help our civic partners understand how our Jewish community is thinking about these issues. And that brings us to this week's conversation. The Massachusetts Special Commission on Combating Antisemitism produced a statewide roadmap for how people and institutions across the Commonwealth can recognize, prevent, and respond to antisemitism. In this episode of Boston Jewish Now, we will explain what the Commission's final report is, who it is intended to help, and how people can actually use it. We will look at the role of state actors and agencies, civic leaders, parents, students, employees, grassroots advocates, Jewish employee groups, allies, and institutional decision makers. That's a mouthful. And clarify what each of these folks can and should do to confront and combat anti-Semitism here in Massachusetts. We will also introduce several of the Commission's clearest recommendations. The goal is to help you identify the places where you already have standing to make a difference, to understand what you can credibly ask for, and know what the institutions you belong to are ultimately responsible for implementing. No one person or organization can carry this work alone. JCRC, CJP Center for Combating Antisemitism, and all of our partners are here to help people and institutions put these recommendations into practice. You can also find more in the in-depth videos that we will be producing and releasing along with this podcast about the specific areas in which you can make an impact. So, Melissa, what would you say is in this report and who should see themselves in it? And how can we turn its recommendations into meaningful results in Massachusetts?
Yeah. So excited to talk about this.
I know you are.
And congratulations, as former commissioner, on achieving this report. I would say at the most basic level, the report recognizes that the responsibility of addressing anti-Semitism and creating the communities and institutions that reflect our values and are inclusive of everybody and places where Jews feel seen and belong are everybody's collective responsibility. So actually, I see also the report as not just a set of findings, but a vehicle for us to actually move from collective concern to collective action. There have also been communities and institutions that have taken really meaningful action on addressing anti-Semitism, and I think the report adds credibility to what they're doing while also creating that roadmap for others to join that effort. So I think it's everybody's report. It is every institution in Greater Boston. It is parents. It is a faculty member. It's a student. It's a Jewish employee. It's a corporation leader. And it allows folks to actually put words and meaning behind show of support to actually acting on that support.
Last December, when the report was presented to the governor and the lieutenant governor, and they said this as well, is that this isn't something just to sit on a shelf.
Right.
This is not just, we have a report, it goes into the state system, and it's there in perpetuity. But it's also really something that we want people to read and to engage with and then to use as a tool in their own communities.
Yeah.
So before we get to the tools that you at CJP in partnership with JCRC are going to be rolling out, and we'll be including a link in the show notes to a new resource page at CJP. Let's talk about how the report itself already established that people are doing this work.
So there were a few places that the Commission's report actually recognized what is already happening in the workplace context and in the municipal grassroots community organizing context. So over the past couple of years, in particular, since the attacks of October 7th, there's been a productive recognition that institutional change or change in institutions to address anti-Semitism can't just happen from the top down, that everybody plays their part. For example, since October 7th, the Commission cited this data that we were able to help support the production of. There was over a 700% increase in Jewish employee resource groups around the country. And so as we're thinking, and as the commission was thinking about what the state and what institutions in the state can and should do to address anti-Semitism, the report recognizes what was already sort of gaining traction, momentum, and providing momentum for action inside those institutions, such as those spaces.
We heard from a number of groups at the commission, including in Lexington United, Conquer Carlisle Against Anti-Semitism, and employee resource groups in the private sector, like the one at MGB.
Yeah.
And it was inspiring to hear that when members of a community, whether that community is a town, the community of employees of a healthcare system, or other, come together and self-advocate, frankly,
right,
change can happen.
Right.
And I'm mindful of something that Commission Chair, Co-Chair Cataldo said often over the course of the year that we were going through this, which was that the work of implementing the commission would not just be for those in the State House, but for all folks in the community to take it and move forward. And I'm also thinking back to Co-Chair Vilas. He talked about the origin of the commission and him going to his colleagues in the state Senate and saying, I want to be an ally. What can I do? And it was his Jewish colleagues in the state Senate saying, why don't you propose the following? I mean, that's really where the birth of the commission started. And so the moment we're in now is, and I would say to you, like, if I'm an ally, or I want to be, more importantly, if I want to be an ally, and I come to you as Melissa Garlick at CJP and say, I want to be an ally, what does the report ask me to do? And what direction does it provide for me to be a good ally to you?
I am deeply grateful for displays and external displays of the Jewish community and solidarity and joint concern for rising anti-Semitism. And the commission's report enables allyship a step further, meaning for the corporate leader to take institutional action within their workplace to include anti-Semitism in their, employee training, or to endorse employee resource groups, or a municipal leader to ensure that they're celebrating Jewish American Heritage Month, or to ensure centralized hate crime reporting. Or school leader for them to make sure that they are teaching contemporary anti-Semitism training to their teachers and faculty, for example. Those are the kinds of actions that are going to create lasting change within an institution. Support the commission's recommendations, of course, that's so appreciated, but also take a look at sort of where your networks are, what institutions you sit in, and what actions you can help foster from the commission's report to actually create that action in your institutions.
We often talk to members of the Jewish community, what is our responsibility, say, in a workplace with colleagues? It is to explain what our experience is. So allies should be learning to attune themselves to what their Jewish colleagues are experiencing and making the space for their Jewish colleagues to name that. But then standing with them and moving the work forward. This is also a tool for Jewish community members who want to do advocacy. Say members of the Jewish community who are trying to think about how to engage their school district. Or members of the Jewish community who are going to their employer and saying, we are having certain experience in the workplace. They may have in the past gone into those conversations without the roadmap, without specific recommendations that came with some broader seal of approval than themselves.
That's right.
And now we have specific recommendations that if, for example, I want to talk to my school committee and I'm concerned about what's going on in my child's school, I can say, here's a set of recommendations that have been produced by a state commission that have been embraced by the governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, the Senate president, Speaker of the House, overwhelmingly by the political elected leadership, and not just political and elected leadership, but all sorts of other associations, like the Mass Association of School Superintendents that was a participant and had a seat at the table, the Mass Commission Against Discrimination, which was a participant and had a seat at the table. If you're going to your town government and talking about law enforcement, the DAs were at the table, the sheriffs were at the table. There were a lot of the stakeholders and the authorities in our state and the credible voices working on these issues who were in the room, who were participants in the process. And so you're going into those spaces with recommendations that aren't just like, here's something I'd like you to do as a parent, but here's something the governor has endorsed.
Yeah. The report does reflect the experience of the vast majority, Greater Boston Jewish community members that we've been working with. We're already seeing some of the community members meeting with their school leaders, thanking them for being concerned about rising anti-Semitism and with a playbook to be able to respond to it. It doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be perfect in the way that it's implemented. We were able to, in partnership with JCRC, distill or summarize the recommendations for each sector area, including K through 12, higher education, municipal or communities, and workplaces. And so you can access them now on CJP's website with also downloadable leave behinds that you can take them into meetings with. So they are a way to make the recommendations more accessible and also to hopefully enable easier implementation.
So let's talk about these 4 sectors just briefly. And let's start with the K through 12 segment of the tools that we are providing. In a school community, what should a parent, an educator, or ally be asking for? What responsibilities does a district have towards welcoming Jewish spaces for Jewish students?
If I'm, advising a parent or a community member in a K through 12 school, which I include myself in, asking a school how they are teaching their teachers and faculty about contemporary anti-Semitism is a really important aspect and takeaway of this report. And then going through the thread in terms of policies and procedures, also the report creates mechanisms for reporting problematic curricula in schools, for ensuring best practices and resources for schools, and ensuring that schools have incident reporting protocols, which came through and
loud and clear. Many districts talked about that.
Right. And in particular, the Acton-Boxborough superintendent was really important in elevating the system that works there for them, recognizing the role that cultural identity education comes in, right? Like understanding the role of Jewish identity as part of education, and not only understanding Jews through the lens of Holocaust education.
That is an opportunity as well for individuals to identify where the gaps are in these schools, that knowing that these are part of what the recommendations are, one can say, we don't have that in our school district.
Right.
And the district should be and must be providing the appropriate training policies and programs. So that's it's a tool to assess whether your institution has done the work, and it is a tool for engagement.
Yeah.
And we're going to do this 4 times, 4 segments. On a college campus, what should students, faculty, staff, and allies be asking for, and what must the university own?
It's interesting. The commission definitely endorsed similar best practices, clear reporting processes on incidents, again, education that includes contemporary anti-Semitism, and the commission recognized a lot of places that we've helped support, including multiple schools at Harvard, Emerson, Tufts, et cetera, that have seen immediate momentum with contemporary anti-Semitism training as well. A designated Title VI coordinator role.
Again, strongly in the report.
Exactly. Very strong in the report. And then the report also really gets into sort of the need for students and faculty to have spaces where they can grapple with difficult conversations and be able to disagree with each other. And I would say that is something that, in our work with college campuses, that is that's the hunger that we felt for those spaces. They were more few and far between. And so I think that's really important that the commission also endorsed those. And then last, I would say, is that open dialogue and relationship between administrators and college leaders and Jewish institutions on campus who know the climate on campus for the Jewish community the best, I think was really important that was endorsed, something we recommend all the time. And I think really highlighted by, representatives from some college campus Hillels who also testify before the commission as well.
I've heard from a number of them.
Yeah.
And again, this is a place where students and faculty can identify the patterns and press for action, knowing that the action that they are pressing for is supported by the State Commission and by these set of findings and recommendations that are embraced broadly across the political and societal infrastructure in Massachusetts. And, I forgot to mention before, but these also, when the commission report came out, there was a letter of welcome and support from Boston business leaders that was also really important and significant in saying that this is a document that is really embraced and endorsed across the center of the civic sector in Greater Boston.
Hugely important. And that addressing anti-Semitism is a civic responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's turn to workplaces. And again, similar question in a workplace. What should an employee, a manager, an ally, or a Jewish employee resource group be asking for? And what does the employer have to own?
So similarly in a workplace, and the commission heard vast experiences at the workplace, which we've also heard sometimes Jewish employees are experiencing significant and direct anti-Semitic incidents within their workplace, colleague to colleague, or they're in direct service, client to, service provider, et cetera. And Jewish employees have gone through an experience of feeling isolated and alone.
Very much so.
And have really been craving those spaces of feeling seen by, their workplace and their leader and feeling like this is a place that they belong. And if we, similar to the letter that you just referenced that business leaders endorsed, really see combating anti-Semitism as part of also creating healthy workplaces, it is part of creating inclusion and belonging. So that's really what the commission's recommendations recognize in the workplace section. By ensuring that people are asking for how a workplace is addressing anti-Semitism training, for example, as part of their HR trainings, how anti-Semitism is included in anti-discrimination policies, and also where there are vehicles, if it's helpful, to create and support Jewish affinity groups or Jewish employee resource groups. And what I would add on to that is creating spaces where there's Jewish affinity groups are also connected to workplace leadership as well.
And again, this is a place where employees and employee resource groups can also use these tools to identify gaps, to educate, and to advise their employers about productive steps and the way forward as employers establish policy, put systems in place for administering complaints, fund training, support the resource groups, and enforce standards.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So our final category is municipal and civic leadership. And at the local level, what should residents and grassroots groups be doing, and what must municipal leaders own?
These municipal recommendations, I would say, are, in my mind, mostly about preparedness. Community members and municipal leaders should not be meeting each other, exchanging business cards for the first time in the aftermath of an incident, and something that law enforcement talks about a lot as well. And so it really encourages those direct dialogues and relationships between community members and municipal leaders and law enforcement, knowledge of where to report hate crimes. And so if I'm a community member, I'm going to ask to my municipal leader if central hate crime reporting structures exist, and if so, where to, physical security measures too, and how they are working together for preparedness in event of a crisis, making sure law enforcement are trained appropriately on responding to these things. And then similarly, like we spoke about with other institutions, is how a community can also just increase identity, cultural, education, celebration, including through Jewish American Heritage Month, but not exclusively. And that's where we saw those grassroots groups really shine, is their ability to create interfaith or cross-community moments of collaboration, which the Commission's report really endorsed in that section as well.
As we often say here, there's so much that municipal leaders can do or state leaders can do to signal who belongs in their community, who's welcome in a particular town or city. And that isn't just through preparedness for responding to incidents, but also in the proactive ways they build culture. And it comes back to something you've noted, that throughout these 4 sections and throughout the report, there is an element of how do we not just handle incident, but how do we build a culture that is welcoming and belonging for our Jewish members.
Yes.
And again here, with the municipal tools. It is also something that residents can use to identify concerns and to build partnerships. It's a tool for going to municipal leaders and law enforcement so that they know what they need to provide, how they prepare, reporting, coordination, and accountability.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the conclusion of running through a summary of the tools that are available through the CJP website. Mm-hmm. Let's close with one final question, which is, what do we want people to do with this report today?
Well, not only read it, and hopefully you'll download the summaries so that you can get a short synopsis of it, but think about the communities that you live or network in, the workplaces that you network in. Start the conversation, but start the action, because that's what this commission's report really enables. I hope that community members see the commission's report as a tool for them to be able to do that over the course of the long term.
And I will conclude by thanking once again my friend and colleague and partner in this work, Melissa Garlick from CJP Center for Combating Antisemitism, and to really encourage our audience, both advocates, community members, and allies, to use the CCA landing page resources and to contact JCRC or CCA. And we are very fortunate here in Massachusetts, thanks to our state leaders who established this commission, that we have a roadmap to you to say, this is what it looks like to be a good ally here in Massachusetts.